Okay, welcome and thank you everyone for attending tonight. My name is Carrie Waite and I'm the Colorado coordinator for United Policyholders. And we have with us today Sandra Watts also. And we're going to get rolling here because we have a lot of really good information to cover tonight. We will go over an hour almost certainly, but I want you all to know that this recording will be made available to you along with a PDF copy of the slides. So you'll have those for reference. If you have to leave a little bit early or you don't have to feel like you need to frantically take notes because this information will be made available to you. So here we go. We're going to get started because we do have a lot to cover. And I'm not sure how many people are new to UP, but I want to let you know that the way this is going to work tonight, we will have the chat available to give you information such as links and things like that as we're walking through the presentation tonight. We do not have a Q&A open tonight because we are going to have a Q&A on the 28th at the same time with several experts that are going to jump in and join us to answer your questions. So we'd ask that you just jot your questions down, and when you register for the Q&A on the 28th, you'll have an opportunity to submit those questions in advance to have a better chance that they all get answered. So anyway, thank you for that, and just keep an eye open for that chat information. UP, we are a reputable 501c3. We are not for profit, not for sale. We are a platinum Guide Star rated charitable organization. And we provide the services that we do in all 50 states for 30 years now. This is our 30-year anniversary. It's kind of hard to imagine. We're funded by donations and grants, and we will be thanking our funders toward the end of the presentation. We're very grateful that we have the opportunity and the funding to do this for Colorado, Oregon, and Washington right now. So we are composed of professional staff like Sandy and government nonprofit partners like the county OEM folks and the Department of Insurance in your states, and then volunteers like survivors that pay it forward by helping with our survivor forums, and lots of consumer-oriented professionals who donate their time and give their expertise. Each state has has a wildfire help library that is specifically curated for your state. So this is just a screenshot of the Colorado library, and then we have, of course, Oregon and Washington as well. There is a huge amount of help and resources available with a few clicks here. So I really encourage you to check out the website whenever a question comes up or you feel like you need a little support. I think you'll find it here. We always also have our upcoming events right here on the right-hand side when you pull up your specific help library. So it's very easy to click on and get registered for the next event. This workshop is intended to be general guidance and not officially legal advice. We don't create a professional client relationship with any individual, and we can't really endorse or warrant any of the sponsors or speakers. That's how we remain impartial, but we can bring you that wonderful vetted information. If you have a specific legal question, we really recommend you consult an experienced attorney on your own. And we are at this time working on providing a free legal clinic, virtual legal clinic. Oregon has already had one, and we're talking about doing one in Colorado in May. So if you're interested in that, you can sure let us know, and we'll look forward to being able to help you with that a little bit too. Sandy is a huge, tremendous addition to United Policyholders because she has such a vast experience in wearing every hat in the claims process. and is a certified fire and smoke and water restoration technician, as well as a property insurance appraiser and acts as a certified property insurance umpire. So we're really happy to have her here and her valuable content on smoke damage and testing and all of that to share tonight. You know me, I'm the Colorado coordinator, and my story started with a fire and a partial loss in my own home in 2012. And I've been involved with United policyholders in about every way ever since. Jumped back in on a bigger basis this year with all the fires in Colorado. So we're going to cover, like I said, a lot of information today. And I'm going to start with this slide because I think it says a lot. After my fire, the very next summer, I was actually participating in helping with another fire that happened in Colorado, the Black Forest Fire. And we had a huge hailstorm, and all of the people at the event, their cars got totaled by hail. That was not fun. And then, so each of us had to go back to our insurers and talk about the hail damage on our car to these disaster tents where they hold the adjusters. And it was just so ironic because as I was kind of, trying to navigate my smoke damage claim with my insurer, I came into this tent to deal with a hail claim, and I saw where there was this no smoking sign with this electronic, and I asked the adjuster, hey, what's that about? And he said, well, that's our HP printer, and electronics are very sensitive to smoke, so we don't allow any smoking in the tent. I just thought that was perfect irony. Anyway, to get to more serious matters, we're going to kind of jump in with an issue of when to move back into your smoke or thermal standing damaged home. And many of you may have already moved back in. Some of you have not moved back in or even gotten back in to see your homes possibly. And some people really don't have a choice but to move back in initially. I did move back in initially. But I just wanted to begin with letting everyone know, whether you're already back in the house or you're not yet back in the house, it can be very difficult to be in the home during remediation. And it is not necessarily safe to be in the home prior to or during remediation for these damages. ALE can be more difficult to get approved once you are living back in the home, but it's certainly not impossible. And the reality is that unseen residues from what burned all around you can cause harm to your health. And insurers may be more engaged to get your claim moving if you are living elsewhere, because of course that's costing additional money. So just be aware that you have options to request ALE, and no one knows your home or your health like you do. The basic breakdown for the language for ALE in most policies is you have an insured loss or peril. In this case, it's fire. It causes your home to become uninhabitable or unfit to live in. And if those conditions are met, that should trip your ALE coverage under most policies. This language should be in your policy. You should be able to look at it and find it. And if you're requesting ALE to live elsewhere, point it out to your adjuster. Some policies have, a little more nuance to them, but generally this is the criteria. So what makes a home uninhabitable? Well, if you or a family member are vulnerable to smoke, mold, chemicals, anything like that, then that lowers the threshold to make the home uninhabitable. Certain conditions, cardiac conditions, asthma, respiratory conditions, young children, elderly, all of these things and many others may increase your vulnerability, or you may just be a highly sensitive person, and that's okay. if there are some conditions that no one is safe in. So you kind of have to, judge how to handle that. If you are asking to live elsewhere and you're getting pushback on the insurer paying with ALE, then you can start with trying to get a letter from your doctor. And if they deny that remediation for whatever the offending substances are in your home or situation is, or they deny the ALE, you can specifically ask the adjuster in writing to show you the thresholds and how they're determining that denial, and then take it from there. Wildfire smoke and even fire suppression materials can contain things that are dangerous. And we provide you here with a couple of references at the bottom that you'll be able to see links where you can get a little more information there. And Sandy's going to give you a wealth of information. So the next topic really we're moving into is the topic of wanting or needing expert and professional help. And, the first level of that has got to do with assessing the level of damage to your standing home. And then it moves into the actual contractors that you might hire to repair that damage. But many of these different points apply to both. And the reason you may want or need expert professional help is because these claims can be very complex and they can involve multiple trades. So you may, need someone who does smoke remediation, someone who replaces stucco, someone who does carpeting replacement, maybe somebody working on a deck. And when you start having multiple trades involved, the claim can become complicated because there are issues of the order in which you want to do certain things, and then dealing with the insurer and payment and cost for all of these things. So professionals can help you with all of that. Time limits can be a little tough to meet when you are in a COVID world with living in the mountains with limited access to your home to do these things during the winter months. And there really aren't always clear universal standards for quantifying or qualifying the kinds of damage that happen with partial loss, and that makes it more complicated. There can be hidden damages that are not easy to see. We're going to get into that more later. Insurers may hire and send captive experts to you, which are their sort of in-house favorites to use. And that can have pluses and minuses, which we'll address more later too, but they generally have a very limited scope of work. They're sent by the insurer to only look for what they want to look for. So it helps to have your own experts to double check that you're getting a fair assessment. And you just, each person, each family has to balance their reality of time and quality of life with the costs of getting help or not getting help. So we're certainly not telling anyone what they, quote, should do. We just want to make you aware of all the options available to you. So what kind of expert is best? Well, generally speaking, when you have a standing home following a wildfire, the first type of expert that might be either thrust on you or you might seek out, in addition to potentially your insurance adjuster from the insurance company, might be a certified independent restoration company, or there might be a public adjuster that comes to your community and is offering their services. These two types of companies that offer their services can help manage the overall restoration and pull in other types of contractors. Or it may be that you will contract out various different aspects. And I'm not going to go through this in detail again because we're going to get into it later on, but just know this slide is here. And we have lots of resources online so that you can look and say, maybe, well, if I'm having issues with my windows, who should I seek out? Well, we'll have that information here for you. Questions to ask contractors and experts. Again, we have links here to a document that it gives many more details about questions for the experts. Our main point that we want to share with you is that if you're going to bring someone in to help you restore your home, it's very important to use not just the normal amount of due diligence that you would in a non-disaster situation, but maybe even more. And because you're relying on them for quite a bit, and they can get overwhelmed and very busy. And so you want to sort of set yourself up front to make sure they're certified, they're qualified, they're insured, you know what their contract looks like, you have some deadlines, all of those kinds of due diligences. So I encourage you to go to this link, and the first link on this slide, and again, you can you'll be able to see this later, and print off that document and just have it with you when you're speaking to people you might want to engage to help you. When you are going to make your case with the, and Val just put that in the chat so you can see it there now. When it's time to make your case with the insurer that you want additional help other than just what the insurance adjuster has offered, or maybe a check for some routine cleaning, that you maybe feel that there's more to the damage in your home, then how are you going to make your case? Well, this is sort of ideal. Ideally, it would be great if you were to choose the testing and the testers. So you're in the driver's seat, and that you could actually be the one that pays them yourself. You write the check and the insurer reimburses you, so that you're, the testers are not working directly for the insurer, but rather they are working for you to make sure that your home is safe and you're getting the extensive testing that you're looking for. It's always a good idea to try to get the approval in advance so that you know you're going to get reimbursed, but that's not always possible. So you may have to make decisions about, fronting some money for the testing and taking the chance about having to, argue with the insurer to get it paid. But it is your home after all, and you want to make sure it's safe. So if you feel you need to do that, that may be worth your while. And we always encourage, make clear, respectful requests in writing. Use language from the policy and the statutes we're going to share with you later. And there are many other ways that you can kind of keep pushing the point, and we will get to that. I mean, we hit on that in every one of our webinars that we do. And documentation is always king when it comes to getting claims paid. So we're going to teach you how to do that. The next step is, let's say you've gotten testers in and you've determined that there's some work that needs to be done, and the insurer has even agreed that there's work that needs to be done. Then the question comes up, well, who do you have manage the restoration of your home? You can manage the restoration of your home. I did for mine. It's very time consuming. It's certainly not the only good way to do things, but remediation companies, restoration companies, and contractors that can act as a general contractor can also manage your restoration. Generally, they are paid by something called overhead and profit percentages. Most insurance companies will consider paying overhead and profit if 3 or more trades are involved, and the percentage varies based on the state and the circumstances that they get paid, and that too should be paid out of your claim dollars. That's a percentage over and above the cost to do the remediation. Some insurance companies, not many, but some do still have what they call preferred contractors that they will offer to you or encourage you to use. They'll say, we vetted these contractors, we believe they're good, they're going to do a good job for you. They may even, the insurer may even, let's say the insurer is USAA, they may even say that they will warrant the work of the preferred contractor. They may or may not. You're going to want to find that out ahead of time. And you want to make sure, again, that that contractor is really going to be objective if they're in your home managing your work. So use a lot of due diligence with that and make sure you're comfortable with who you choose. You want them to share your goals and ask. Don't, be afraid to ask. This is an example of a preferred contractor in a partial loss. And what happened here was this preferred contractor for a large insurer charged for and stated that they were packing out of the home all of the smoke damaged furnishings. They were going to be cleaned and stored safely until the home was remediated, and then they would be brought back in. Well, the homeowner was out of town and living in an ALE situation while the restoration was going on, and came and paid a visit and found that a large amount of their furnishings were actually in the unremediated garage, along with all kinds of debris. And it's an unfortunate example of what can go wrong if you don't have the right contractor and you're not involved and paying attention to what happens. So if these dirty furnishings were brought back into a clean, remediated home, it would possibly cause the home to have to be cleaned yet again. And that's not a good thing. So everybody kind of take a breath. We are moving into the next section here. And we're going to start with extreme wildfire heat behavior. And this is just a little quick kind of physics lesson on why wildfire heat and damage can be very different from maybe just an isolated one house is on fire or a kitchen fire or something in your neighborhood. And I'm sure all of you have come to realize this, but I'm just going to articulate it in the terms that the insurance industry maybe can understand. There are three types of heat generated from a wildfire. Wildfire heat is very erratic. It can create its own weather and wind. In the situation of my fire, it literally created a dry thunderstorm. This huge, wildland fire created a dry thunderstorm that pushed the fire into my neighborhood at 65 miles an hour on what was otherwise a clear day. So it can be very erratic. It can cause swirling winds. It can cause dramatic changes in pressures. And what can happen is the houses can literally breathe in the debris and the smoke around it because of the differentiation in pressure. And that's why attic insulation and the eaves around the attics often are places where fire debris can be found, or where homes can start and be caught on fire in a wildfire situation by pulling burning embers in. So there's convection heat, and that's the transfer of heat by the physical movement of hot masses of air. Air is heated, it rises. And you're all kind of familiar with that. Conduction is the transfer of heat within a material itself. So this is the situation when maybe you have a total loss and the steel beams in a house heat up so much from the fire that they can damage the concrete by transferring the heat into the foundation. I'm going to show you an example of this in a partial loss house that's a little different in a minute. And then you have radiation heat. And this is like when you're sitting in front of maybe a fire pit and your face is warm, but your back is cold. Radiation heat isn't heat that is moving. It's just the presence of heat. We have here a list of places that can potentially be damaged from extreme heat. It's not all inclusive, but it's pretty good. Outside your home as well as inside your home. Again, this is something you'll have to use as a reference. This is kind of an unusual slide, and it's interesting. In this particular home, all of the homes directly around this house burned. But this house did not burn. They were able to use a wall of water and to protect this home from burning. But several months after the fire, while the house was being remediated, the homeowner started noticing that in the areas where the wall met the ceiling, there were nails popping, and the drywall tape started kind of showing. And the adjuster had no idea what was going on with this, and felt it wasn't connected to the fire. But we were able to get a structural engineer in there to do an analysis. And what I want to show you here is, you'll see the pink language that I show below is on this sample language from a structural engineer report. And it basically says the changes in the humidity and temperature which impacted the interior drywall started as a result of the fire causing extreme heat inside the residence, and the resulting drop in humidity. So it pulls the moisture out of the house, the heat does. And then as the temperature and humidity changed months later, back to what would be more quote normal, the building elements responded and changed. So there was some movement in the wood within the walls of the house, and that caused the buckling. This report from a local, respected, independent structural engineer was what tripped the insurance to be willing and able to pay to do the cosmetic repairs. And that was all that was required. The same report, I'm showing you language with regard to the windows. I'm going to kind of jump ahead a slide. Here is a picture of a window. This is a wood frame casement, kind of upper end casement window that's aluminum clad on the outside. These windows were closed and locked during the fire, but you can see the amount of soot that came in. Now, sometimes this is limited to just right around where the windowsills are. At least the visible bulk of it is limited there. But the trip point here is that if the window seals were working properly throughout the firestorm, this should not have made it into the house in a sealed operable window. It is really important, if you can, to get or find pictures from before cleaning is done so that you can document this kind of thing, because if you do have thermal damage to your windows, which could be simply that the seals have been damaged and need to be resealed, or it could be the entire window is impacted, you want to be able to demonstrate that. The engineering report here did explain why this really should not happen. He stated the operable windows and transom lights on all floors exhibit damage to the glazing, seals, and gaskets. And so maybe they could have been fixed, but in this situation, the window manufacturer went out of business years ago, and so they could no longer get parts. So that then tripped the replacement of the windows. They could not be properly repaired. So this homeowner, got 2 bids from different window repair companies. Both of them suggested that that these windows be replaced, and the insurer ultimately did that. It did take quite a bit of back and forth, but they were able to get that done. The next sort of exterior damage I want to show you, it's kind of hard to see because of the light, but the bottom line is this is masonite siding after it's been power washed, which is what the insurer prescribed as the solution to the smoke residues and heat kind of baked on goo that was on this masonite. And as a cooperating policyholder, you're going to go ahead and let them power wash your house and see if that takes care of it. In this case, it did not. It actually made the staining stand out more, and an addendum to the claim was made to request painting. And this documentation and the advice of two good painting contractors was able to get the insurance company to agree to seal and paint, as well as repairing some of the heat damage. The other thing that can often go wrong is metal gutters and other things like that can be compromised. You have to use a close eye because they may be slightly warped or kind of wampus, and not work or not be able to have the water flow normally as it was intended. So we just wanted to give you those examples. Moving on from heat, just a quick little coverage for potential damage from fire suppression or power outages. I'm sure, as you guys know, a lot goes on in the craziness of these huge wildfires. So there can be direct damage resulting from the fire, because even if it seems secondary, it's direct because it wouldn't have happened but for the fire. An example of that should be covered by insurance is the weight of fire engines on driveways can crack the cement. The high pressure hoses and water can cause problems for cement movement and spalling, which is sort of chipping or discoloring, leaching of some of the minerals in the cement to both stucco and concrete. Even the foundation can be damaged if there's enough high volume water in an otherwise dry condition. High pressure hoses can force water into homes through failed windows and doors. And that can cause damage to the floors or subsequent mold. I gave you an example of how pressure washing can cause sometimes secondary damage. So even fire retardant can create some problems. So just be aware that even those things, though these things are not, that something is burned or heat damaged, it's still damaged as a result of the covered peril and should be included in the evaluation. Let's see how we're doing for time. I think we're doing okay here. So again, there are different people who will be qualified to inspect for different types of damage. And you can look at the slides closer for that if you're not already into it. The main note I wanted to make here is that one of the things that we've found very helpful in the past is, say for windows, or if you have Trex or a similar type of manufactured decking. All of those manufacturers have tolerances listed for their materials. For example, vinyl windows are generally created or made, extruded at about 140 degrees. So they're pliable at 140 degrees. So if you have evidence that the wildfire created heat above 140 degrees and your windows are not operating as they should, your vinyl windows, then you want to look closer at those windows and see if your warranty is voided and if the manufacturer will give you a letter, or you can just print information off of their site to share with your adjuster that might help you in getting those windows repaired or replaced. Just be aware that an ethical claims adjuster may be able to identify the damage from your insurance company. They may be able to help you identify damage, but they're really not fully qualified to deny you damage. There's a process, and you have a right to get fully certified expert opinions and to use your own judgment to ask for coverage for things you believe are damaged. Again, most insurers do not guarantee the work that contractors do. There is no legal relationship between the insurer and contractor. Even if the contractor is communicating with the insurer on your claim, there is no legal relationship there. So it's important that you remain the primary communication with both your insurance company and your contractor, unless you have hired someone like a public adjuster or an attorney to speak for you. And you want to do all your due diligences. Generally, with the rules in all states for general contracting, you have the right to select your contractor. So that is my first part, and we are going to transition here. Everybody take a moment and a breath, and I am going to turn it over to Sandy Watts, and Sandy's going to give you her super premium smoke class, and this is really, I wish I had had this information when my fire hit, and I'm grateful that she's here to give that to us now.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight. So I'm going to go through the smoke portion of this program. So, and I'm going to start with, I think it's kind of, whoa, it's jumping forward already here. I think it's kind of important to start out with, you know, what makes up smoke. It seems a little rudimentary, but it is kind of important to know what you're dealing with. There's components to smoke. It's made up of gases, which are vapors, you know, like water vapor. Smoke also has a vapor. A lot of the gases that are contained in smoke, you know, have some things in them that that are toxic. However, once the smoke clears, most of the gases, they stop being a problem. It dissipates in the air. And what that leaves you with is the aerosols, which is particulate matter and liquid droplets, things that settle down onto the surfaces and a lot of times cause pockets of odor. Oh my God, it's kind of hard for me to see the moving here. So just to get an idea of how small some of these smoke particles are, this circle represents a human hair. Actually, no, it's a human hair, which is 75 microns, and a micron is 1/1000th of a millimeter. So it's very, very small. The yellow dot it represents the smallest diameter visible by the human eye unaided. And this little tiny dot here, this little red one, is 1 micron, and that is the average size of a wildfire smoke particle. So a lot of times, you know, you'll hear people say, I don't see anything. That doesn't mean that nothing's there. You know, you have to kind of go with a whole bunch of different inputs to determine whether your house really has damage from wildfire smoke. So this kind of breaks it down what the particulate matter is. Smoke is incomplete combustion of carbon-based materials. Wildfires, you know, different types of fires have different characteristics. So the type of smoke that deposits in your house will be different if you say have a kitchen fire. Say you have a grease fire on your stove. The type of smoke that occurs in grease fire, whoa, it's jumping forward. I don't know what's happening here. Pardon me about that. I'm not touching anything, it's jumping around. So that type of smoke is going to be very different. Wildfire smoke is very dependent upon the type of things that burn. So when you're out in the forest, mainly it's just carbon-based products, trees and grasses and things like that. Now, if your neighbor's house burns down and you're in the line of smoke, then what the smoke contains is whatever was your neighbor's house, in your neighbor's house. So that's important to remember. Wildfire smoke tends to be a little bit drier than, like, say, grease fire or protein fire smoke. So that it's a little bit easier to clean. Char are the bigger particles. Okay, so sometimes you can see the little flat burned things. Those are called char. Ash is residue after complete combustion. That's when all the carbon-based material has been burned. And then soot is the fine black particles, mainly carbon, plus residual gas particles that result from incomplete combustion. So different materials, I'm not going to get too deep in this, but different materials burn at different temperature points. So some can be completely burned and some can be partially burned, and that's what makes up soot. The thing about soot's the stuff that causes the black, that black smudgy thing. And soot can be acidic. There's the components of soot are the things that cause things like pitting to metal and things like that, because it's acidic. Okay, just to give you a background. Residual smoke particles, often naked, invisible to the naked eye, like that diagram showed. And the main difference between ash and char is that ash doesn't really have any of the original characteristics. When you have char, sometimes you can take a look. You guys have all seen a piece of paper that's charred, that's maybe not completely burned. And even though it's all burned, you can still see it's kind of paper. So that's the idea between ash and char. And again, the composition depends on the materials that burned. Okay, what else is in there? Smoke residue is what remains after the smoke dissipates. The particles settle on surfaces, and there's a lot of different things in smoke. Combustion, it releases these small molecular weight. They're called PAHs, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. VOCs, which you guys may have heard about, volatile organic compounds. They also, not listed here, there's semi-organic volatile compounds. And then different chemicals, benzenes, aldehydes, and so forth. Again, it depends on what was being burnt. I worked on a fire once where the policyholder had a bunch of different chemicals in their garage, and the garage burned, but the house didn't. But as a result of all the things that were stored in that garage, it made the cleanup of the smoke a lot more difficult, and it had to be a lot more in depth in order to get everything removed because of the chemicals that were released of the combustion of the garage contents. So keep that in mind. If you're in an area, where it's a lot of trees around you, not a lot of other houses, generally the smoke's just a little bit safer. Okay, so why does all this matter? Knowledge is really important for the proper restoration of your home, so that you can have conversations with professionals. I can't even tell you how many times I've heard from people over the years where an adjuster has come in and said, I don't see any damage. It looks like dust to me. You don't have any smoke. Maybe they can't smell it. People have different, varying degrees of the sense of smell. So it's important to be informed when you talk with professionals and know that you can't necessarily see all the damage. There's a trend towards insurers using the visibility threshold for measuring damage. So, sort of be aware of that. They can't do that in California, but in other states, it might be something that they can do. So be aware of that. And then, safety, long-term exposure for workers as well as occupants. And then the varying degrees of sensitivity of the occupants. Carrie touched on that a little bit at the beginning. But, people are people. And so you have, a lot of people have asthma or COPD or different lung conditions that make them more sensitive to smoke. And that's important when you're approaching the claim, when you're approaching the cleaning process, which I'll get to in a minute. And it's just something, that's very important to keep in mind. Okay, so now what? Okay, pardon me. As Carrie said earlier, you really want to set your objectives, and your objective should be to restore your home to its pre-loss condition. That's what people want. You just want a house that's not filled with smoke, like it, wasn't filled with smoke before the fire. So it's important in certain situations to obtain detailed evaluations of the damage. The evaluation needs to be by qualified independent professionals. Okay, and includes both the scope, and the scope is what is damaged, and the estimate is how much is that going to cost to repair. Okay, and there's a lot of different ways to reach that, um, that objective. And it generally starts with insurance adjuster estimates and restoration company estimates. So we're going to go through some of those. Okay. So let's talk about who's qualified to evaluate smoke damage. So the first thing to remember is that you as homeowners can show the adjusters, testers, and remediators the affected area. One of the things, and I think it's obvious, and I didn't used to say it, but I say it now because I have seen testers come in and test the cleanest part of the house. Testers should be testing the dirtiest part of the house, the part where they can see the smoke, and so forth, because obviously there's going to be, there's wind currents and things in the house. So as your smoke is settling, it's not going to settle evenly everywhere. There's places where it can access better than other areas. Maybe if you have, a door open, if there's a breeze blowing, some of it's going to blow around. So you need to really identify and show the people the affected areas, because you know what your house looked like before this happened. Now, the insurance adjuster, and this is kind of a sore spot with a lot of the carriers, your insurance adjuster can confirm, if it's easy to see the smoke and soot and everything with their eye, and they can see that it's, it's everywhere, they are qualified to confirm that there is sufficient smoke residue present to authorize professional remediation. Okay, so if they can see it, they can say, yes, this needs professional remediation. What they can't do, and what they're not qualified in most cases to do, is determine that there's no damage and that remediation is not needed. And the reason for that is that, like I said earlier, you can't always see the damage. You can't always see the extent of the damage. So in cases, and I've seen a lot of them this year, where the adjuster walks in, says, I don't really smell anything, or you can open your windows and the smell will go away, and you don't need remediation, and it's great, you can move right back in. That is not something that they can do unless by some strange coincidence, and I haven't yet seen one, but unless they're qualified in some way to do it. Okay, so the people qualified to do it, certified IRCRC remediation technicians. Now, it's important, I'm one of those, but it's important to know that I'm not an industrial hygienist, and there's a big difference between industrial hygienists and remediation technicians. Generally, remediation technicians just have more specialized training, are able to look in areas and see things that maybe an adjuster might otherwise miss. They're familiar with the protocol. But really, the only way, if the adjusters are saying there isn't enough smoke residue present, is to have testing done. Okay. And in order to do that, you need an indoor air quality professional or tester, and or a certified industrial hygienist. Now, we go back and forth. Certified industrial hygienists are the sort of cream of the crop. They're the people who really know what they're doing. It's more like an engineer. Indoor air quality professionals, they're great. They know what they're doing in a lot of cases, but they don't require the level of education that the industrial hygienists do. So just know that. They're also a little cheaper. And in certain cases, especially in cases where you're very sure that there is residue in the house, you can sort of balance how much you need versus how much it's going to cost, because in a lot of cases, the insurance companies either say that they're not going to pay for testing, or they're going to send their own tester out, maybe that has some problems. And in a lot of cases, you as homeowners might have to pay for the test, at least until it's, you can turn it into the insurance company and ask them to pay you back. So just something to keep in mind there. Okay. This is just a picture of, refrigerator coils covered in smoke particulate. I mean, it's pretty easy to see that is very damaged. And these little, they call them, shoot, I'm having a blank on the name. They're on air conditioning systems, fins. And the coils really are hard to clean. They're almost impossible to clean. So it's just a little visual there. Okay, so when do you need testing for smoke damage? Okay, I believe that you need testing for smoke damage if your adjuster, who's not qualified or certified or doesn't, do testing for a living, declares that your home is perfectly safe and habitable and only requires standard cleaning. I am still shocked at, how many times the word Mary Maids has come past me in the last 5 or 6 months. So if you get that, but you have reasonable belief that your home has smoke residues, then that's a sign that you need testing. If you have a family member or someone else that lives in your home who has a medical condition that makes them vulnerable to smoke exposure, you need to weigh that. One of the things, if you need, and this kind of ties into the family member occupant medical condition, there is pre-remediation testing, which is before the cleaning companies come in, and then there's post-remediation testing. And post-remediation testing is really necessary if you have someone with a severe medical condition where their well-being depends on making sure that the remediation process was complete and removed all of the residues. A lot of people ask me if they need post-remediation clearance testing if they don't have medical issues. And to me, that is something that it's pretty personal. It depends, on how sensitive. I'm not very sensitive. I feel like I could look and see the remediation that was done and feel that it was, that it was good and that it did its job. Some people don't have that peace of mind. So it's really something that's kind of personal. Most of the post-remediation tests that I've seen for people in the last few months, the certified, if you use a good IICRC certified company, they generally do a good job, especially if they know. One of the things that I will tell you is tell your remediation company that you're going to do post-remediation clearance testing, even if you might not choose to do it in the end, because it will make them pay attention a little bit better. I hate to say that, but it's true. Your home is in the red zone from a wildfire. So, somebody added that to my slide. I'm not sure. Usually if you're in the red zone, if you're right there, you're going to be able to see the residue, and your adjuster is going to be able to see the residue, and it's going to be there. And I am of the opinion that if you can see it, most of the protocols, and I'll get into the protocols in a minute, most of the protocols that these remediation companies do, when they clean, they're going to get pretty much everything. If you have reason to believe that there's a high level of the chemicals, like I talked before, or if you've got some sensitivities to VOCs or aldehydes or something like that, then it might be worth your while to have the pre-remediation testing for those compounds, knowing that the initial remediation protocol is going to be the same for all of the different byproducts. Hope that's clear. Okay, so I went through this a little bit before. Who should do the testing? Obviously, the most qualified is the certified industrial hygienist. They're generally the most expensive. They're generally worth it. Indoor air quality professionals. There's a lot of different certifications, professional certifications. As long as they have solid testing protocols and chain of custody, generally they're okay. They're just all over the board. Sometimes a certified remediation professional can provide enough information to the adjuster to trigger coverage. I've done that many times before, where I've gone back and forth with an adjuster. I did one not too long ago on a hardwood floor, and the adjuster's like, no, it's sealed, and the remediation person came in and, pulled up the registers and was able to show the adjuster, look, here's how it's going. It's going in through the cracks in the wood and so forth. So a lot of times I would recommend using those as your front line, because sometimes they're free or they charge you, just a little bit for that. Okay. So one of the things that I see a lot are commonly overlooked areas for testing. Okay. Indoor air quality, you want to make sure that there is some air sampling done. The HVAC and ducting, if the AC or the heater was on, then it makes sense. It's going to pull all the smoke in and it's going to distribute it throughout the house. So you want to look in the ducts. We should have had the HVAC itself should be tested. Attics and crawl spaces. I see a weird number of test reports that don't have attics and crawl spaces, and those really are the number 1 and 2 areas that get the heat, because attics and crawl spaces have vents. You have foundation, vents around the foundation of your home. You have attic vents to let out that heat, and that's as Carrie was talking about. It's like weather pressure, and so the pressure, the smoke goes into the lower pressure area and it just draws it right into the attics and crawl spaces. And they have insulation, and insulation acts like a sponge. And so when you have those areas, that insulation almost always needs to come out. Okay. Subfloors, wall cavities are good. Subfloors, this would be an underlayment and sheathing. Those would be in cases where you've got some really heavy smoke infiltration, and sort of more a phase 2 situation where, you need to really dig down if maybe the initial cleaning goes and it's not taking care of the issue. Okay. So what findings matter and why do they matter? So sometimes, like I said before, sometimes you're going to have to bite the bullet and get your own testing done so that you can provide documentation to your insurance company to document the damage that you have. Okay. It's also good to know the possible contaminants that are present in your structure, because that'll help you, help the restoration professionals choose, different filtration and cleaning products. Although, like I said before, generally the initial remediation protocols are the same across the board. Okay, so these are different testing methods. It's good to kind of have an idea of, of which ones. It should always start with a visual assessment. Okay. Visually look for residues, the black particles, smell the area. Smell is sometimes hard. If you're in for a long time, you guys know, you become acclimated to the smell. I like to, whenever I go to a house, especially if it's a really light smoke damage house, I like to get something from the house, from the homeowner, that is like cardboard. I usually, if it's anywhere near the kitchen, I don't know, last time I took a box of macaroni and cheese, and you put it into a Ziploc bag and zip it and take it away. Leave it, in the trunk of your car for a day or so. And then when you're in a nice, fresh place, open it up and it will let you know exactly what's going on. And it's good to have that also for the adjusters. In the old days, when adjusters were located in the towns, people used to just bring things like that and give them to them on their desk. Can't do that anymore because they're somewhere else. But anyway, so the next testing method, and this is used a lot. I don't love it, but it's fine. It's wiping. They use, sponges, swabs. They actually use these alcohol wipes a little bit more. And, they just do wiping and then they look at it under a microscope. The problem that I have with wiping is that most of the time they're bulk samples. So they'll go through and they'll take a couple of places in a room. So it doesn't really give you any information on the level, it's like a cumulative level. So it doesn't really give you an idea of where in the room is most affected. It's just one of those things it's like more yes and no to me than it is quantitative. Tape lift sampling can be kind of the same, but it can be a little more precise. And basically what it is, they have these pieces of tape, and they take them and they put them down on, visible areas where they can see dust and stuff, and they lift it up. The residue is left on the tape. Sometimes they do divide the tape into different areas, which is also fine. But again, it's more of a bulk thing. Bulk air sampling is when they set, under ideal conditions, they create negative air. You don't see that a lot, but they kind of seal off a room, and they run a machine that pumps a certain volume of air through a filter that catches the airborne particles. And it's just based upon the air volume and the amount of time that they run the machine. And then that can give you counts on that. Micro vacuuming is, it's actually not air sampling, but it's micro sampling of, it's sort of the same thing. It's just like a vacuum machine, except instead of just going into the air, they put it against soft goods, carpet, upholstery, bedding, all of that, sucks it through at a volume, captures a certain amount so they can get a percentage. You can do testing for aldehydes, VOCs with some air sampling equipment. And then you need to make sure that they do proper chain of custody procedures, which is, signing off when they take it, when they sign it off to the lab and so forth, so that it's your sample, that it was properly handled, it didn't get mixed with somebody else's. Okay, so on reports, let's see how we're doing here. There's a wide variation in reporting styles. The depth and detail depends on the extent of the damage. It depends on how good the report writer is. A lot of these you will see they use some boilerplate language, which I'm not fond of. So sometimes you'll see, fire reports that have some mold language in it and so forth, and for some reason they can't take it out. So you just need to really look at it, see if it makes sense. Chain of custody should be documented. The laboratory testing should be done by an independent laboratory. It should never be done by the tester. You should get a copy of the actual lab report with the readings in it. And the results should be quantified, not pass fail. It should give you a quantity of particles in the samples. Okay. This is just chain of custody. These are swabs that they used, and they mark them and they sign them off. Okay. So sample reports, I just thought I'd toss a few in here that talks about representative samples. They want to talk about what they did. And in this one, they collected by wiping identified areas, and they talked about the size of the area. They have the 70% alcohol swabs and bulk samples. They put them in the casing. This is more about chain of custody, but it's good. They tell about the lab that they sent to. It's good that they give you what they did. They're talking about air samples using a high volume pump connected to tubing and all of this. So that is something you want to see. This is an example of a laboratory report, just so that you should get something that looks like this that comes from the lab. Okay, and it should give you a location, an area within that location, and then the percent of different particles. I like this one because they only focused on byproducts of smoke and combustion. I am of the opinion that less is more. Some people, will get reports and they have all the mold, they have all the pollen and all of that. To me, it muddies the water a little bit. And you don't want, an adjuster telling you, well, your house is dusty, or you've got a lot of pollen and, that's why it needs cleaning. So this is just something to sort of watch for. Okay, so standards. There's a lot of talk about standards. Where are they? I won't get into it too much. The IICRC, which is the certification board that's most well recognized, did have a fire standard, and there was a legal battle with another certification board over who owned the standards. It's resolved now, so they're working on getting them republished. In the meantime, all the historical standards have been pulled. Now, that doesn't mean I've had a lot of adjusters say there's no standard, which, you know, is kind of ridiculous. There's just no reference for it at this time. Everybody knows what it's always been. And in general, it's anything greater than 2 to 5% of any of the byproducts are recognized as affected areas. I haven't seen any adjusters who see those amounts, anything over 2%. I haven't seen them say, you know, that's an allowed amount. Okay. One of the things the report should address is background measurement. There's different opaque particles that are in the samples, so they want to sort of address that. Some of them lump them all together. I saw a report today that just said opaque particles. I hate that, because that is somewhere where they can push back, because there are other opaque particles other than smoke, ash, and char. So here's just like, if you're reading your report and this is a red flag to me: attic, no recommendation; HVAC, no recommendation. These are commonly affected items. If there's no recommendation, I would, instead of just saying no recommendations, I would go on and say, you know, we tested this area, visual inspection saw no soot. We tested the area and it didn't pass threshold. You know, that's what I would like to see, instead of just no recommendations. And in this case, they didn't test either of these. So no recommendations is actually, I think, the incorrect answer. I would not test it. So something to watch out for. Always look for attic, crawl space, HVAC. Okay. So remediation, I'm sorry, I'm going to try to go fast here. So you want to make sure that all affected areas are identified for remediation. So you just need to know which rooms are affected. For the most part, if there's more than a couple rooms, your entire house is affected, and you need to have some sort of cleaning done in all of the areas. You need the terminology and the protocols identified. You need the adjuster to sort of get on board, maybe with the restoration professional, and then you need to review and reconcile the estimates. Okay. I'm going to do this really quickly, but this is really important. I talked to a lot of people who hired different levels of restoration professionals. Now, if you stick with the IICRC certified people, they are going to follow this protocol. Others may not. First thing you do is you remove any source. If you got burned trees around your house, any burned pieces of wood, like I've seen a lot of, where the fire came right up to the deck, all that needs to be removed. You need to take the textiles and soft goods out of the house and clean them off premises. Clean the contents and structures simultaneously, the remaining contents. And you always start at the ceiling and work downwards. And that's simply common sense, because the smoke particles, even though they can adhere to the ceiling and the upper walls, when they start cleaning, even if they're using a HEPA vacuum, some of those particles are going to become airborne, and they're going to float down as they go. So you always work from the ceiling down. And that is why it is a big mistake to not do the attic first. And I've seen people like that, because even the attic, it can cause things to shift through cracks depending on how your house is. And then if you've cleaned the house but didn't do the attic, then you do the attic, then you end up having to do sometimes more of the house. So HEPA filters, air scrubbers need to be run to capture particles that become airborne. This is really important. I'm aware of a major insurer, State Farm, who says they don't insure air, so they're not going to run HEPA filters. I think that oops, we've got a typo there. Sorry about that. We need to push back on this. HEPA air scrubbers are a integral part of the cleaning process to get that particulate matter that becomes airborne during the cleaning process out so it doesn't settle elsewhere. I mean, otherwise you'd have to let it settle and then clean the bottom areas. So it's just because they're very small particles. It takes a long time to filter out. But if you've got your air scrubber running, the air scrubber is going to suck it all in and really, really helps the cleaning process. Dry removal of the particulate matter first, that's HEPA vacuuming, chem sponges sometimes. Then you go back and you wet wipe if you have to. Then you do some sort of, hydroxyl, ozone. Ozone's pretty controversial, but thermal odor control I don't really like, but these are things that people use. If all of those things are done and there's a persistent smoke odor, then sometimes you need sealing of porous surfaces. Sometimes you need to test in, if you do the original protocol, which is from here to here, and you have persistent smell, then you need to go on to phase 2 and maybe think about testing, inside the wall cavities, different areas, and then maybe sealing porous surfaces. If you've got this fire, we've got a lot of people like in the Santa Cruz Mountains that have unfinished wood wall and ceiling coverings, really hard to clean. They're not, it's not like drywall. Drywall's hard, so sometimes those require, some secondary, sealing. Okay, safety matters. I'm going to go through these first because it is already 6:45. Know that they need PPE. That's the best thing about COVID. It brought PPE to the forefront. We've always been using it in the restoration industry. It needs to be used. These really quickly. This is a HEPA vacuum. You cannot use a regular vacuum to vacuum smoke particles. They don't work because of the size. Remember that little red dot? If you use a regular vacuum to vacuum smoke particles, it comes in and vents right out the exhaust. So that's that. This is an air scrubber. So when I talk about air scrubbers, this is a smallish one, but it moves 500 cubic feet per minute for air exchanges per hour in a basically 1,000 square foot room. These are excellent. I love them. This is an ozone generator. This is a hydroxyl generator. These are things that shoot out charged electrons that grab the smoke from the air and neutralize them. They cause them to turn into inert particles. I like hydroxyl better than ozone. This is just pros and cons. You can look at this later. So I'm going to hit the adjuster's estimates really quickly here before turning it back over to Carrie. They need to be detailed and quantified. Okay, one of the things that we've seen a lot of is these lump sum estimates, okay? And don't rely on a captive expert. There's, some insurance companies are bringing their restoration contractor with them, who's given them like a lump sum estimate, and there's no way to compare it with your remediation professional. I'll show you what it is. So you might see these categories. So they have these categories, okay? Category 1, category 2, category 3. And for each of these categories, there's like an associated, I don't think we had to cut the deck. Yeah, we did. There's an associated like cost per square foot. So they say for this one, it's, $3 a square foot to clean to do this work. And they take the square footage of your house, and maybe it's $4 for this category and whatever. This leaves a lot to be horizontal surfaces, normal volume of contrast. This leaves a lot to be interpreted, okay? What the estimate should look like is this, okay? It should have everything listed, okay? Content manipulation, clean your light fixture, HEPA vacuum the walls and ceiling, clean the windows, clean the outlets and switches, clean the gas range. See, so all of this, and then this is going to be, and it's really hard for them to fault this because it's like, okay, what part of this doesn't need to be done? And the answer is nothing. So whoops, I went backwards again. And just for records, this is the adjuster's lump sum estimate. This is the same job, adjuster's lump sum area estimate for one little area, $2,400. And then this is the restoration contractor's area is $3,400. So this one small area made $1,000 difference by estimating it. And then exactly. So when you go back to your restoration contractor and you say, you know, my light fixture is dirty, well, there's the light fixture, they should have cleaned it. If you go back to this, it's like, oh, well, they're supposed to do all this fixtures and so forth. So I don't know, just it's the way it should be done. Okay, what now? You've got to review the adjuster's estimate for accuracy, make a list of questions to ask them. A lot of times they're not diagramming the house, they're just estimating. And then these questions, this was one estimate we pulled out, but in this case, they had half of an HVAC service. You know, you got to look for things like that. Ask for itemized detailed estimates, get your own estimates, and get documentation from restoration companies regarding the cleanability of your content. Certain things like mattresses, things that they can't clean, get a document from them to back up your claim. Okay, so that is that. Hopefully that was helpful to you. And we are going to go back to Carrie. Thanks, Carrie.
Here. Thanks, Sandy. Thank you for all of that. And I just want to let you all know that we are at 6:48, and I know it's a long time. We are going to try to wrap it up pretty quickly, but we want to make sure that we at least included in this deck for you and in this presentation a complete starting point and kind of outline for you. So that's why we have so much material and it's taking a while. So thanks for sticking with us on this. Let's see here. Okay, so we're going to start with knowing your rights now. And this is important, and you'll see how it ties in with the information that Sandy and I gave earlier. There are three primary sources that dictate how your insurance company must behave regarding claim handling. There's your particular state's insurance-related codes and statutes, and those vary dramatically. I'm sure you guys have heard already. California kind of leads the way because of the number of fires and other things have caused and stoked a lot of regulation on the insurance industry and the restoration industry. And so they have the most. Colorado has adopted a number of regulations, including timelines and duties that the insurer has. Oregon and Washington, not quite as many, but I understand they're underway. The other area that dictates the relationship between you and your insurer and what they're required to do, and you're required to do, is your state's general regulatory codes and regulations. And this is bad faith and contract law, which applies to all contracts, not just insurance, but it does apply to insurance. And then, but those require usually civil action in order to mandate anything if it's not already being followed. And then there is importantly the language in your specific policy that you have in force. And this is super important because obviously you want to be able to know what your policy says. It kind of what drives the rest. And it's got to be the specific policy in force at the time of loss. So make sure that you're taking a peek at that, that the policy that you're following is you're deciding how to navigate your claim is certified by the insurer, and that the dates on that policy show the effective dates when the fire actually occurred. The next thing is, with regard to rights, is an example of some regulations that have been adopted in 2013 in Colorado, and it's about who decides on the restoration firm. We've talked already several times about how your insurance company may have a preferred restoration company or a preferred contractor. They may even have testers that they want to bring in. And certainly you want to always cooperate with your insurance company. It's one of your duties under the law. If they want to bring in a forensic industrial hygienist to test, you probably ought to go ahead and agree to let their tester come in and do that. However, that tester may not be objective. As Sandy said, they may not test in the obvious areas, and they may have protocols that are very narrow from the insurance company because they work for the insurance company. The insurance company writes the contract with them about what they want them to test. So it's important to know that by statute in Colorado, the law prohibits an insurance company or its agent from requiring that appraisals or repairs to your property be made by a specific business. You have a right to choose who is going to work on your home. And I mean, there's certain reasonable standards around that. You also do not have to travel unreasonable distance to choose a repair business. That's another right that has been brought in. And, you know, this is a tough one because if you're up in the mountains, like in Grand County or some of the other areas, there just aren't a lot of contractors available. But the point is your insurer cannot force you to do that. There are a lot of other regulations. This is not all inclusive. We just wanted to highlight a few things for you. Those are the things the insurer can't do. Some things the insurer is required to do is to inform you that you can select any repair business of your choosing, and that you are supposed to receive a settlement document, a scope of loss, or a document that specifically lists what the money they're paying you for your damages is based upon. And that's one of the things that Sandy was showing you kind of in comparison. When partial losses are settled based on an estimate prepared for the insurance company, they need to share that information with you. And there are also requirements around reasonable time and reasonable prices. And so we know that in times like this, where supply is lower than demand, prices go up. And if you live in, Larimer County up in the mountains, or in somewhere in Washington, where you don't have a lot of Home Depots or a lot of contractors, the prevailing market price can go up and be much higher in a geographic area where transport is more expensive and that type of thing. Your insurer is supposed to take that into account. And again, we have some great references here that you will get on the deck that are links that you can go to on our website and other sources to get more information on these rules. There do not appear yet to be, as I said, any express guidance from the law in Washington or Oregon yet that says that an insurer must allow you and inform you that you're allowed to use your own contractor, but that doesn't mean that you aren't. Most policies have language within them that states that. So take a peek at your policy with loss settlement and see if you can't find that language in your policy. And if you get pushback, point it out to your adjuster. Also, you can ask them if they're going to try to require you to use their preferred contractor, are they going to warrant the outcome? And how will they guarantee that it's fair? The general principles of fair dealing and good faith apply in insurance just like they do in any other contractual obligation you enter into with a business. So just because there isn't an express law about something doesn't mean it doesn't apply and you don't have those rights that you can exercise. If you have questions about these things, if you feel your insurer is not dealing fairly with you, if they're not responding in a timely manner, if you feel they're not doing a thorough and fair investigation of the damages, or they have denied damages that you believe should be covered. We encourage you to touch base with your state's insurance commission. All of these states are aware that these are issues following a major disaster like these wildfires. Here's the Washington State Insurance Commission website, phone number. They have online chats and email, and usually you can file your complaint online fairly easily. At the very least, this will trigger the insurance commission to reach out to the insurer and get your some attention on your claim in a positive way. They are legally not allowed to penalize you for making a complaint. So don't believe that if you make a complaint, your insurer is not going to pay you what they owe you. That is just not how it works. If you make a complaint, you're the squeaky wheel, and you get maybe the eyes of a higher up adjuster that's more experienced or more interested in settling the claim. Oregon, again, the same thing. We know that Oregon is currently working on a number of new legislative efforts to get regulations and are proactively reaching agreements with the insurers to do certain things to help you during the disaster recovery. The Colorado Division of Insurance, same here. And they, again, you can just go right online and click to file a complaint. Their customer service reps there are very experienced and will do their best to help you. This slide is kind of the ideal. It's like, you know, this is what everyone wants to be able to say happened if they have a smoke and heat damaged loss. This is the basic intent of what all homeowners insurance policies are sort of made out to be. If you watch the insurance company commercials, you know, where they snap their hands or clap their hands and fingers and voila, you're restored to your pre-existing condition. That's an indemnity policy. And the way that happens with a standing home that's damaged by wildfires, what Sandy went through in detail: inspected and tested, then remediated and cleaned, then either repaired or replaced, possibly retested. All of those costs, except for your deductible, hopefully covered by insurance, if you have the right kind of insurance and you have done, you know, your due diligence, and the insurance company has done their diligence back for you. Your sense of security is restored, and your home and contents value is restored. Then you're indemnified. You're back where you were at least before the event occurred, minus whatever deductible you agreed to in your policy. And, you know, resolving disputes, this is a big category, and we're running out of time here. This is something we cover in much more detail in a later webinar. So I'm not going to get into it in detail, but what I will point back to is your ability to resolve the dispute is often going to come back to how well you know, your due diligence was when you entered into your contracts with your remediation people, and what kind of insurance contract you have. So do your best to be familiar with those contracts, and if you can do that before you sign them, that's best. Hopefully it says who is responsible if you're unhappy with the work, and what type of mediation might be available that may be prescribed in the contract. Is the contractor Better Business Bureau a member, and how are they rated? Maybe they belong to an industry group. Certainly if you're using a restoration company or an industrial hygienist or a structural engineer, you want to know what their certifications are and if they are an active member in good standing with their industry group. If a restoration company is someone who the insurer sent as a preferred company, but you're not happy with their work, how are they going to get paid? What's going to happen with that? You have to have somebody come in and do, make it better. Talk to your insurer about how that works, because even though the insurer may pay that restoration company, will they pay to have it redone if that preferred company doesn't satisfy you with the job? And when you are not satisfied, or if, you can again pull in your state's insurance commission division, Department of Insurance. I'm going to quickly touch on some common coverage disputes and the terminology. Let me check the time here. Yeah, we're at an hour and a half here. So these terms may already be familiar to you, maybe not. Line of sight, most insurance policies and some regulations even require that the insurer restore not only maybe the damaged wall that had to be repaired, but if it has to be painted and there's fading in the other walls that are visible, then that entire line of sight of walls or that entire area of carpeting that's visible should be made to be uniform in appearance. So it, often if you have to have a window replaced, that may damage the wall, and that wall has to be repaired and repainted. Well, the rest of the room should likely be repainted also. If you have furnishings that were damaged, maybe a dining room with 4 chairs, and 2 of the chairs were damaged during restoration, broken when they were transported out, and those chairs are no longer available, then generally speaking, your policy, unless it specifically excludes this, you would be entitled to a new dining room set that was matching and uniform in appearance if they could not match it with existing chairs. Another common area of dispute is clean versus replace. And it's tough when it comes to things like wall-to-wall carpeting. I mean, logic tells you that just like with insulation, carpet and the padding under carpet is a sponge. Some of it, you could clean it all day long and you're not going to get the smoke residues out. And so how much time and effort and money should be spent cleaning versus replacing? It may be that depending on the situation, you have to go through having it cleaned first and seeing if that does the trick. It's kind of like, medical procedures, you do the least invasive thing first. And that's how insurers often look at this. Payment for expert evaluations can be a sticking point. We've already talked about that at length. And one of the terms that's, even if it's not expressly in the state's regulations, that's just sort of a concept of insurance and contract law, is the idea of full and fair evaluation of damages. You are entitled to a full and fair evaluation. So if the insurance company sent a adjuster and they, as Sandy described, came in your house and, sniff, sniff, I don't smell any smoke, I think this is just dust. They maybe poke their head in the attic, but they don't really go look in the eaves. They don't do any kind of testing. That is not a full and fair evaluation of the damages if you're in a wildfire zone and you are aware that there is smoke in your home. Another sticking point can be if you have had, say, your exterior power washed and the paint is peeling. The insurer may deny painting that is clearly required, stating that the peeling paint was a pre-existing condition. And there's, a bunch of different ways that can be addressed, but certainly if it wasn't, paint that was forced off because of the fire from power washing that the insurer recommended, then, they need to step up and pay for those damages in most cases. Some of the pushbacks that are commonly heard in these situations, as Sandy said, we don't cover air quality. I had my adjuster told me in the beginning when I immediately asked for some testing that the air inside the house is still better than outside just after the fire, and that they can't control the air outside and they don't warrant air inside the house, so they don't do industrial hygienist testing. It turned out that was not accurate. But that was what the traveling kind of, group of contracted adjusters that flew in after the fire, that was kind of the standard line. And after pushing back, ultimately, we did get testing and we did get it paid for. I talked about the pre-existing wear and tear, sort of secondary issues with that. Adjusters sometimes will downplay health impacts. If you tell them, well, I've had cancer in my family and my husband just finished some chemotherapy, and his doctor says that he shouldn't be exposed to these chemicals in this house right now, or the smoke, then they should be paying attention to that. And you get that doctor's note, and you have the right to push that to make sure that you can be out of the home while the remediation happens, and that the full remediation can be done to ensure your safety. And I've kind of already talked about these other things. Finally, the last one, lowballing, is the best example of that, I think, would be something like Sandy pointed out in the two different estimates, one being a bulk estimate and the other being a detailed estimate. Sometimes the insurance companies use estimating software or just standard things to kind of throw a grouping of costs that they think should cover it and hope that you will accept that, and then all is good. The problem is that the dollars are in the details, and so is the devil when it comes to smoke and heat damage. So do push for those detailed estimates and fair pricing that is relevant in your community, what it will actually cost you to get the work done. I talked already a little bit about the overhead and profit. A lot of insurers push back against paying that. It may just simply take an email to them letting them know you have more than 3 trades involved and you believe your time is worth something, and they need to pay for the coordination of that restoration. I am going to just leave this slide here, even though it's very important. I suggest you go back and look at it. These are all the different areas that commonly are hard to see or may not surface until later on, that you should consider when you're having your home evaluated. I will touch on the final one because I think it's so important. Something we all found out the hard way living in Colorado following a wildfire in a very dry year is that many of the homes that were not directly burned, but were near the fire, and I mean near as within maybe a half a mile from the fire, sustained thermal damage to the underlayment of roofing, compromised windows and gutters, and stucco fracturing. But some of those things don't show up until later or until you're looking for them, and you have to maybe do some destructive forensics to find it. If you have a tile roof that is intact and did not burn, I mean, tile is made in high heat, it may not have shown evidence of damage. It does not mean that your roof is okay, because the underlayment of the roof, the ice and heat shield or the tar paper that usually is underneath the tile, is what really keeps the water and things out of your home. And that can melt. The heat can be transferred through the tile and melt that underlayment, and it can be very hard to see unless a roofing company gets up there and literally lifts the tile up. We had many examples of that where people didn't figure this out until a couple of years later when they started having problems with their roofs. Same thing with stucco. Stucco can look pretty good. Maybe it's a little stained, but it can look pretty good following wildfire that didn't actually burn the house, but it changes the nature of it, and a structural engineer can help you with that. Once it has been compromised, then when you have the change of seasons, you can start seeing lots of fracturing in the stucco. It sort of ages much faster. You might have places where the stucco falls. These are good things to have evaluated early on, and there are ways structural engineers can extrapolate that that's happening even if it's not evident yet. So that's pretty much the content. I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping things here. I want to let you know about our other resources. Stay connected. We have these wonderful survivors to survivor forums twice a month where other experienced survivors who have been there and done this are there, and you guys can talk to each other and help each other. We have one coming up this Tuesday night, and the link is going to be easily available here, or to sign up, or you can sign up on your state's specific page on our website. These are upcoming events. This is a snapshot from our new website, and here's this particular event, and the next event is the Survivor to Survivor Forum, Tuesday the 20th. And then there are several other things going on. The next one about this is on April 28th. We're going to have the follow-up Q&A to this event tonight where you can get your questions answered. We're going to have experienced public adjusters and our executive director, as well as some of the state regulators available to answer your questions. And then I have a plea. In addition to what we do in following a disaster, we try our best and have been very successful in our advocacy program, Advocacy in Action, in trying to help get consumer-friendly regulations on the books. This is why California, in part, has hardy regulations. This is why Colorado's were improved in 2013, and we want to be able to keep doing this. And our surveys are an excellent way that we can get feedback directly from you that we can then offer up to the powers that be to show the problems and the needs and gaps that exist to help make good, sensible legislation possible. Also, our surveys help us and the other partners in the community know what you need going forward. So it takes just a few minutes. It's anonymous, one per household. We really hope that you will click on this site. We do have one open in California and one in Colorado right now. And I think, I'm not sure about Oregon and Washington, the status on those, but be looking out for them because we do them at about 6 months and a year for sure, and sometimes 2 years. It tracks levels of underinsurance, and you will be entered, your email will be entered into a drawing to win a $50 gift card. So these are our past events. I just want you to know that you can find them, you can click on them. Often you can find the PDF or the actual video that you can click on to watch. Thank you so much to our funders. We couldn't do this without our funders, and we are very grateful to have the Community Foundation of Boulder, the Grand Foundation, the Grand County Wildfire Emergency Fund, and Center for Disaster Philanthropy funding our activities in these in Colorado. And then the Center for Disaster Philanthropy has generously allowed us to be present in Oregon and Washington as well. So that is it. If you guys have stuck it out through this, you are really troopers, and I'm extremely grateful. Yeah, the staff from Dora will be at the Colorado Q&A on the 28th. I wanted to make sure to mention that too. If you are having trouble finding access to this PDF and the video from this event on our website, you can email me at Kerri, Kerri, I'm going to put it in the chat, at uphelp.org. We won't have it right away. It'll take us a few days to get it up on our YouTube site to click into, and a copy of the PDF, and we'll be happy to share that with you. I wish you the best, and I want to give you the encouragement that you'll get through it. It is often a lot of work, and it is an immense learning experience. And in my opinion, even though it was life-changing, it was life-changing in good ways as well as difficult ways. So hang in there and stay tuned with us. Thank you.